but that's what it is. First off, I want to start by thanking this neighborhood and community. Not only did we have to ask a lot of people to be displaced from their homes for an extended period of time, but the neighbors opened up their homes to us to help us during this very difficult time. So I want to thank the community for their patience, for their understanding, and for their support why we were involved in this event. I also want to thank the Lakeland Police Department, the Hillsborough Sheriff's Office, the State Fire Marshal's Office, the Tampa Police Department Bomb Squad. All of them helped us. When you have a protracted event such as this, it's absolutely impossible to keep your SWAT team on the ground 24/7, and the Lakeland Police Department sent their SWAT team and supervisors to assist us, and for that we're eternally grateful. That's why we work together and train together, so that when one of these incidents occurs, that we can be as effective as possible. Let me back up to tell you that this began yesterday. The suspect in this is Gary Cawley. He's 39 years of age. He's married to Amy Cawley, who lives here with Rylan, her 6-year-old daughter. About 4 a.m. on Saturday morning, Gary comes to the residence, and he and Amy argue all through the morning about a variety of domestic issues. Yesterday afternoon at about 1 o'clock or so, Amy says, Rylan and I are going to the beach. And it was told to us that Rylan had apparently let slip to Gary that they were going with a guy who, by the way, Gary doesn't like, which made this domestic event even worse. So Gary says, well, you're not taking Rylan. He holds her. He has in the meantime gone to the garage and come back with a handgun that Amy says I didn't even know was at the house. So now Gary's armed with a firearm. He is holding Rylan against the wishes of Amy, and the event begins with a 911 call to the sheriff's office. Deputies arrive, we set up a perimeter, we immediately call for the SWAT team and our negotiators. And that's what occurred for the next 24 hours. For the next 24 hours, we talked to Gary. As I told you yesterday, we're never comfortable with a man that's got a gun, that's threatening suicide, and not allowing his daughter or whoever the hostage is to leave. Because a person who is suicidal can very easily be homicidal. So over the next 24 hours, we negotiate with them, not only us, but also the Lakeland Police Department. And this goes on where we have asked him literally dozens and dozens and dozens of times to turn his 6-year-old daughter, Rylan, loose, to let her come out. And we also asked for him to give up. He would tell us, yes, I'm coming out. I'm putting on Rylan's shoes. I'm putting on my shoes. And this narrative went on for about 24 hours. He continued to play games. He continued to lie to us. And he absolutely refused to come out. We became exceptionally concerned this morning when there was about a 5-hour period that he wouldn't talk with us at all. We found out that he and Rylan were barricaded inside a walk-in closet in the master bedroom during this period of time, and he was simply taking a nap. So we began talking to him again just before noon. And the communications picked up where they left off yesterday, where he said he was coming out, but then he wasn't. He said he was going to send Rylan out, but then he didn't. And then about 1 o'clock, he said, I will let Rylan out at 1:30. At 1:30, we think, well, 30 more minutes, another promise broken. But it wasn't that way. At 1:20, he allowed Ryland to come out. Ryland walked out. She walked out very calmly into the arms of our sheriff's deputies, and we took her away and began at that time negotiating once again for Gary to come out while we talked to Ryland. And here's what Ryland told us. She said she wasn't afraid, but her daddy was shaking all night. He was walking around in the house all night long and all evening with a handgun, and he was afraid. Gary told Ryland just before he sent her out the front door that don't be afraid of the deputies. They're not going to hurt you. Go walk out and walk to the deputies. And then he told Ryland, and then I'm going to kill myself. At 1:24, we began to talk to him again. And we talked to him for about 30 more minutes until about 1:52, 1:55. So we had another 30-minute conversation with him. During this period of time, we sent the robot in. We actually went into the house, into the master bedroom, and pushed a hole through into where he was holed up in the closet. We talked to him there and told him to give up, to give up, to give up. He was having nothing to do with any of that. So this is about 30 minutes later. It's important to understand what we knew about him in advance. We knew his probation status called him a violent offender with special conditions. We knew that he had 14 previous felony charges, everything from felony domestic violence to drugs to theft to fraud. We knew that he had 7 misdemeanors to include battery, DV, and drug charges. We also knew that he was currently on probation for felony domestic violence and had a violent history. When he refused to come out after us talking to him while he was in the closet, we began to introduce chemical agent. And we introduced chemical agent through several different windows in the house, and obviously that began to take effect. We continued to tell him, walk past the robot, it won't hurt you, it's not armed, and come out front. He first came to a front window, and that was about 3 minutes until 2. When he came to the front window, he had a gun. He would point the gun at his head, put it in his mouth, and point it at his chest. We continued to tell him over and over, put the gun down and come out, put the gun down and come out. He continued to refuse. Then he came to the front door and continued to refuse to come out, and us telling him, put the gun down. He moved the gun from his head to his mouth to his chest, from the head to his mouth to the chest, but he still would not give up the firearm, and he still would not come out. At that time, we introduced more gas behind him, because obviously at the front door he was getting fresh air, and we introduced more gas. He stepped out of the house at that time with a gun in his mouth and shot himself in the mouth. He was immediately deceased. We sent our medics. We sent our medics to check on him, and obviously we witnessed him with the gun in his mouth and shoot himself, and he was immediately dead at the scene. We have our detectives now working a death investigation, and we will be there with our crime scene for a period of time. The good news is that we were able to get that 6-year-old beautiful little girl out safely. She's alive and she's well. The sad news is that he told us the truth. I'm going to commit suicide. He had been telling us that since yesterday, and that's exactly what he did, was commit suicide in the presence of our SWAT team members as we were introducing gas that last time. Are there any questions?
Sheriff, I can imagine you would want this to end a little bit better than it did, but can you give us a sense of just how it was going back and forth with Gary?
I can tell you that he reiterated throughout the day yesterday and throughout the night when he talked to us, and then this morning, about committing suicide. We had hoped that he wouldn't. We gave him opportunity after opportunity after opportunity not to commit suicide. When we got him to the front door, we felt really, really good that, well, he's going to give up. But he wouldn't put that gun down. He would not put the gun down. And ultimately, as you can well see, he didn't put the gun down. He put it in his mouth and shot himself. So, this event is over. Our homicide team works our suicides, and they will be doing a death investigation. Then we'll be forwarding all of our reports to the state attorney's office for their review, and the medical examiner will also be doing his investigation as well.
Can you give us a sense of how the girl is doing right now, how she's doing mentally and emotionally?
I can tell you that when she came out, we had the opportunity to talk with her, and I haven't received word since she's been told that her dad killed himself, but she was doing remarkably well at that point in time. We fed her pizza. We were initially talking to her, trying to gather up more information to find some angles to get Gary to give himself up, but that wasn't to be. So I think remarkably well under the circumstances, but at that time she didn't know that her dad really had killed himself. But he said, he told her, the deputies won't hurt you, but once you go out and you're safe, I'm going to kill myself, and that's exactly what he did.
Was he legally allowed to have a gun?
He was not legally allowed to have a gun. He was a convicted felon. And we have a series of charges that he would have been facing today had he not committed suicide. Armed kidnapping, possession of a firearm during the commission of a felony, possession of a firearm by a convicted felon. There were a litany of other criminal charges, serious felony charges, that he would have been subject to today had he not committed suicide.
Are mom and daughter back together? And if you were there, how was the reunion?
Mom and daughter are not back together yet. We have DCF involved in the case, and we are going to do an emergency CPT interview with the daughter this afternoon. Certainly our goal is to reunite mom and daughter just as soon as DCF say it's safe to.
The daughter was released around 1:20 p.m. today. At what time did you take his own life?
Excuse me?
At what time did you take his own life?
The daughter was released at 1:20. That's when we began talking with him, and 2:02 p.m. is when we started reintroducing chemical into the house behind him, and that's when he shot himself. So once again, we negotiated with him and talked to him about 40 minutes before he finally killed himself.
Sheriff, besides the duration of an event like this, talk to me about the challenge that you guys have. You're kind of between a rock and a hard place when you've got that 6-year-old little girl still in there.
When we approach one of these situations with a hostage situation, we approach this situation as if it were our 6-year-old daughter that was in there. And that's what every one of these SWAT team guys did, from not only the sheriff's office but the police department, as well as all of our hostage negotiators. Our primary goal was to get her out alive. Our secondary goal was to get him out alive. He cooperated with us and sent his daughter out, so mission 1 accomplished. His number 2 mission was to kill himself. He was successful with that. We weren't pleased that he chose that outcome, but that was his decision.
Sheriff, I know every issue, every incident is a learning experience. What's the takeaway from this?
The takeaway from this for the community is, one, thank you for helping us when we needed help. The takeaway for the next person that would think of doing this horrible event, why in the world would you subject your children to this? Because this will be everlasting as time goes on, and we're going to make sure that the child has the appropriate mental health counseling, not just now, but for the future as well. And number three, I want to thank all of our SWAT team guys for doing a very professional job. We avoided having to shoot him, and it was touch and go right at the very end. Had he moved that gun from here to here instead of from here to here, he would have forced us to have shot him. And I'm very happy that he didn't make us shoot him. Okay? Thank you very much.
Thank you, Sheriff.
Everybody else goes to get interviews. I'm stuck texting.